The feed is live, and welcome back to another episode of Hollywood Purgatory.
Mhm,
A little bit of a break for us recently,
mhm,
folks.
mhm.
We had 4th of July, then I had Anime Expo. That took up a big chunk of my time, but we're back, and we've got another spoiler cast for you this week. And this week's episode is Marvel's latest adventure. So we had Black Panther in February. We had Avengers Infinity War in May, and now it's July, and we have Ant-Man and the Wasp. So our third Marvel film in less than 6 months. And it's the Ant-Man sequel, Ant-Man and the Wasp.
To be fair,
Hold on, let me just do the volume because we're getting a bit weird feedback. Go ahead,
and,
Jay.
and Infinity War is actually in April, technically.
Right, it can. It
But
did
did we
get
do a
moved. Yeah,
Deadpool 2 one? Did we do a Deadpool 2
yeah.
one?
We talked about Deadpool 2 and
That one
Infinity
was
War.
in May, to be fair.
Yeah, but Deadpool 2 is not the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This
True,
is
that's true.
so that it's 20th Century Fox, even though it's technically a Marvel property. So I'm just, oh, all right. So yeah, we had in May we had Deadpool, and that's another
And
Marvel
here's a
property.
question, too,
So
real
it's
quick.
four. If you count Deadpool 2, it's four.
And
Yeah.
here's a question, real quick. How was Anime Expo?
Anime Expo was fun. You can check out some of my coverage of that
Mhm.
at 411 Mania, and I'll be having a little bit more. There were some good premieres.
I
There
heard it was
was
crazy hot there that weekend.
it was hot for a couple days, like 108 degrees.
Oh. Mm.
It's been a while since it was that hot in LA, and yeah, it was like walking around in an oven. But
Oof.
I'm sure people in some parts of the world have had it far worse. So
Mm.
plus, you're walking around in air condition most of the time at the LA
That's-
Convention Center. So, Ant-Man and the Wasp, a sequel to 2015's Ant-Man. Ant-Man sort of was a film a lot of people thought were going to flop. It didn't. It did fairly well
mm.
for itself. It got good reviews, even though it had some problems during production where Edgar Wright was attached to write and direct the film.
Mhm.
It took a while to get going, and then right before it was supposed to start production, he had creative differences with Marvel Studios and exited the project.
Mhm.
Enter Peyton Reed, the director of such films as Bring It On and The Breakup. He came on as the new director, and he is also the director of the sequel.
Mhm.
So the first film featured Paul Rudd as the new Ant-Man, Scott Lang, and also in comes the Wasp in this film. So before we get started here, Jay, what did you think of the first Ant-Man?
It was all right. I mean, it was all right. I mean, I didn't hate it, but it didn't blow my mind like some films that have come out with Marvel. Like Marvel's done some films that you've been like, it was really, really good or good in every way from start to finish. And this one wasn't that way for me. I enjoyed it, but it didn't blow my mind. So
Okay,
it was
so
one of the good films.
of the 19 or 20 MCU films, is
Uh,
Ant-Man does the first Ant-Man break into the top 10?
I want to say no.
No, it doesn't. But it's okay, you think?
Yeah, it's okay. It's not a bad film. It's not. It's just, and I think this one suffered from was it did have such a rocky road to get made. Is what made it only okay.
This one this one or the first one?
The first Ant Man.
Okay.
Yeah, because that one did have a rocky road to get made. It took.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
So this one they move forward with the story with Scott Lang,
Hmm.
and now we have a new female hero with the Wasp,
Hmm.
and this is sort of her big coming out party for Marvel. So before we get started, we have a little thing before we get into our spoiler cast. This is a spoiler cast of the film, so that
Hmm.
means we're going to talk about major specifics, spoilers,
Hmm.
and plot details for the entire movie. Look, the movie's out; it's out there. So if you're watching us right now, this is your warning that we are going to be doing a spoiler cast for Ant-Man and the Wasp. That means it's a full spoiler discussion of the entire movie. So, Jay, what should our listeners and viewers do
Well, you really
before
have
our
two
spoiler
options.
cast?
You either
Yes.
turn the mute all the way down,
Yeah.
or just cover your ears.
Cover your
Earmuffs.
ears. Or that's if you haven't seen the movie yet.
Yeah.
So, and if you have seen the movie, then you're good to go. So
And you're
cover
also
your
welcome to share
ears.
it with all your friends and family. I'll review.
Yeah. So then cover your ears, go out, see the movie, and then come back and watch your spoiler cast later, right? All right.
Yep.
So now it's time for Marvel's Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now, before we do a deep dive into the film, what are your just basic impressions of the sequel, Jay?
You know, my basic impressions. This reminded me a lot of Thor Ragnarok, just in the sense that it was lighter fare.
Yeah.
And really, it was much needed lighter fare, because especially after what we got in April, I'm sorry, some of the wounds are still there for me.
Yeah.
Very, very deep wounds. And even though Deadpool was somewhat lighter fare,
Yeah.
Deadpool 2 was somewhat lighter fare, this was kind of what fans needed right now. They needed a lighter fare, more comedic, like, you know, there's serious moments, but there's a lot more fun too. And it reminded me a lot of Ragnarok in that sense.
Now you talk about deep wounds. Some wounds were reopened in this film.
Yeah, but we'll get to that later.
We'll get to that later. But there were definitely some wounds, and there were some gut punches in this movie. There were some kicks in the gut, much like the end of Infinity War, and we won't go into too much detail to the ending, but we'll have to address it later. But I guess fair warning, we are going to be talking about the ending for Infinity War because it relates to this movie. So warning on the ending of Infinity War as well. We are going to talk about it. But if you haven't seen either of these films by now, what the heck is wrong with you? Like, go out and see. If you're going to see one movie this year, see Infinity War, right, Jay?
Yeah.
You should have seen
this movie. And this movie is kind of like Ragnarok too, where I think it starts like right around the time of after Civil War anyway, right? So that's where this one starts.
It's not right after. I think it's been at least a year, I want to say.
But it still kind of follows like after the events.
It's after the events of Civil War.
Yeah.
And in Infinity War, if you'll remember, Black Widow mentions that Scott Lang, Ant-Man, took a deal with the authorities to put him under house arrest because teaming up with the Avengers was too hard on his family. So we first off, we start with a flashback of the original Ant-Man, who was Hank Pym, Michael Douglas, and we meet his wife, Michelle Pfeiffer, who was the original Wasp. We knew that Janet Van Dyne was the original Wasp in the first movie, but we never really see her outside of the costume. Here, we finally get to see Michelle Pfeiffer playing Janet. Now, some of you comic fans will know that Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne were two of the original five members of the Avengers. So we finally get to see them both on screen. What's yeah,
that was pretty cool.
So we get two new heroes in this film. We do get Michelle Pfeiffer as the Wasp. Any thoughts on Michelle Pfeiffer joining the cast?
I thought it was kind of an interesting choice. I didn't necessarily expect it, but it's not a bad choice, really. I mean, even though she's had her little like bumps here and there, she's for the most part been a pretty good actress in most of what she's done. So I was kind of surprised, like, oh, cool, she's in this now. All right.
So this flashback, it's probably like 25 years earlier, or it's probably in the late 80s or so. So basically, Hank Pym and his wife Janet are going on a mission to stop that missile. We see a little bit of this scene in the first movie.
Yes, this is like an expanded of that scene.
And it's right. It's an extension. We see them leaving Hope when she's a little girl and saying goodbye to her. To go on their mission. We see Janet has sort of a sense of humor with how she raises Hope. So they're going on this mission to stop a missile. Ant-Man's regulator is broken and he can't shrink down. So Janet shrinks to a subatomic level in order to stop the missile, but she's lost in the process. And then we're back in the present, and Hank Pym reveals to his daughter Hope that he believes that Janet is still alive and lost in this subatomic, they call it the quantum realm. In the comics, it has a different name. It's called I believe it's the microverse. It's basically the microverse, but I do not believe they have the rights to the microverse anymore. I think Hasbro probably has the rights to the microverse. So now it's the quantum realm, the subatomic quantum realm. So the whole movie, is basically about rescuing Janet, the original Wasp. That's basically the crux of the entire movie. So this is a smaller scale story, and I think that really worked for Ant-Man and the Wasp. I had to adjust the volume controls because there is some bad feedback coming in. So I'm sorry about the technical issues, folks. So we get a bit of this was a smaller scale story. So not only was it, I guess, lighter fare, Jay, we got a story that was a little more intimate, smaller than Infinity War, because Infinity War was like universe spanning. It was interstellar, and you have the whole universe at stake. Here, what's at stake is not as big, but it's still personal. What did you think of going in that direction for the sequel?
I think what was really smart about it was it was kind of nice to learn about it. I kind of like, another chapter in this story, and kind of almost helping like close that chapter. Almost just kind of what it was doing. And it was interesting just how like something so simple did become something pretty good, actually. Really.
Well, yeah, it's a simple plot of we have to find Janet and rescue her. Basically, it's like it's almost. Have you seen any of the original Cruise Star Trek films?
Yeah.
Have you seen remember The Search for Spock?
Briefly, yeah.
Okay, well, like The Search for Spock is about they find out that Spock is still alive on the Genesis planet, and they're going there to rescue Spock, basically. So the gist of this movie is the heroes are trying to rescue Janet. And then
I hate to say it, though, when it comes to what you just said, I actually remember the one with the whales much better than The Search for Spock, sadly.
That's The Voyage Home, and that's a popular movie. So, I mean...
I've heard it, a lot of fans don't like that.
A lot of fans remember and love that one. But going back to this one, so we go back to Scott, and Scott, he's under house arrest, basically, so he has sort of that ankle monitor. Things are better with his family. He's allowed to see his daughter Cassie. Things are better.
And correct me if I'm wrong, the opening scene is where they're just kind of acting like they're like they have like because you see where they're playing around this looks like little like micro world that they just kind of are having fun, and that was a good opening. I thought it was kind of
they're just having a cute little game where he's trying.
It was a fun opening, and
and
it was a good way to start this film, I think, because again, it kind of sets the tone for the whole film. Like, hey, yeah, there's gonna be serious moments, there's gonna be drama, there's gonna be action.
This was more of a comedy.
We want to keep it mostly comedic and fun. And what was interesting too was the comedy didn't really fall flat much, which I kind of liked.
Some of it didn't work for me, but it was more. I will say this: it was more of a comedy than the first one, and I think a lot of the material worked better than the first movie.
Yeah, I agree.
And second of all, Paul Rudd is very good in this role.
Yeah, he does. He's kind of like more like kind of used to this role at this point. I think it's safe to say he's kind of he's like
he also co-wrote I believe he co-wrote the movie, so there's that too. So I think Paul Rudd knows how to write his he knows how to write material for himself, basically.
And I'd say Michael Pena was better in this too.
I think everyone was exponentially better. I think Evangeline Lilly was better here than in the first one.
True.
I had a lot of problems with her characters in the first movie, and I still have problems with the Hope character, but less so in this movie. So Scott is dealing with being under house arrest. He has to answer to an FBI agent named, who is the character's name? Jimmy Woo, played by Randall Park. He played, if you don't know who Randall Park is, he played Kim Jong-un in The Interview with Seth Rogen.
I think he was also on Fresh Off the Boat, wasn't he?
He's in Fresh Off the Boat. He's done a lot of, he's shown up in a lot of film and TV shows.
Yeah, so I know him better from The Interview. I really never got into
the Jimmy Woo character. I was very disappointed with. This is a character from the Marvel Comics. They made him one-note comic relief, which, is fine for this story, but they didn't have that great of a role for the character in a Marvel film, which I was a little disappointed with.
Yeah.
So he has to deal with he's on house arrest and he's waiting to get off house arrest in 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
He and his con artist friends from the first movie have actually started a new small business together. They're trying to get a security company off the ground. So that's how we have Michael Pena's Luis in this movie, and then who are the other two guys? It's who's the rapper? Ti.
Yeah.
Ti plays Dave, and then David Dasmalchian plays Kurt. So they're trying to start a new security business. Things are going well for Scott, all things considered, because he's on good terms with his ex-wife Maggie and her husband Paxton, and things are going well with his daughter. The problem is, though, because of what Scott did in Civil War, and he took the suit to fight the Avengers. He's now persona non grata with Hank Pym and Hope, who don't want to see him at all. So that's sort of the main problem, is he sort of broke by doing what he did in Civil War and fighting with Captain America and getting arrested. He sort of broke a trust between them. So that's sort of,
it wasn't just that he had to make them hide because they weren't like they didn't sign the Sokovia Accords.
Right. That's the other issue, is that Hank Pym and Hope are now in hiding because they don't want anything to do with the Sokovia Accords. So they're on the runs and basically fugitives from the law. And Jimmy Woo says, if you have any type of contact with them, we're going to arrest you and them. So that's sort of the problem. And then the inciting incident is that Scott has a dream, and he dreams about meeting the Wasp, not Hope. He dreams about meeting Janet, Hank's wife, in the quantum realm. So he actually has a burner phone, and he tries to contact Hank and Janet and let him know he had this weird dream, and that's how Janet finds him.
Did he like hit his head, or was he in the tub, or was he just taking a nap, or how'd that happen?
I forget exactly. I need to see the movie again, but I recall he had some sort of dream after the FBI came over to his place. I don't know if it was hitting his head or whatnot. So then that's what Janet brings him to his lab. So basically, they've built a device to travel to the quantum realm to find Janet Van Dyne, and they need some parts from a black market technology dealer who is Sonny Birch, played by Walton Goggins. So Walton Goggins, not really a full-on villain, but sort of a minor antagonist in the movie. I thought Walton Goggins was actually pretty okay in Tomb Raider earlier this year. Did you see that film?
I didn't get a chance to see that one, no.
Okay, so he's done a lot of film and TV work. If you've ever seen Justified, he was on Justified. He was on The Shield. He's probably known to a lot of people for his work on those shows. So, did you like Walton Goggins as Sonny Birch, Jay?
No, he's Nick. He was good. I know, okay, so I've seen him in Shanghai Noon, and I recognize him from that. Probably The Born Identity too. I saw a couple of these movies he's been in. So
he was in Quentin Tarantino's
Cowboys and Aliens. Okay, I remember
he was in Hateful Eight. He was one of the main guys in Hateful Eight.
And Django Unchained. Okay, so I've seen him in a couple of things. He's been in a lot, actually. He's a fairly
prominent working actor.
Yeah, probably American Ultra.
He's not a huge star, but he does a lot of film and TV.
Yeah, right. He was pretty good. He was not a bad character. It's kind of like I kind of wish his character would give him a bit more to do, because he was big, but I don't know. Like, he's done so much.
Well, he was a minor antagonist in this film. So meeting him is how we get our first big fight scene with Janet as the Wasp,
which was an amazing action scene.
It was a good action scene.
So, the action was definitely pumped up here much better than it was in the first one.
Right. So and then because Janet's fighting, Hank gives Scott another suit, another Ant-Man suit. So now we have Ant-Man and the Wasp fighting together. And in this fight scene, the part they're trying to obtain in order to finish their machine to save Janet is stolen by someone called Ghost. Who this was played by Hannah John Kamen. So she's sort of the main antagonist of this film. We do learn a little bit more about her backstory later. But what did you think of the overall look and design of the Ghost character, Jay?
It was definitely, when you first meet the character, it's really interesting because it really gives it gives them both a run for their money. You don't know a lot about them at first, just that they're very powerful, very dangerous.
She has the power to phase through solid objects, basically.
Yeah, and like, I kind of almost liked the character more when you didn't know much about it. First, there was more of mysteriousness there.
Yeah.
As the character, you get more revealed about it, like, oh, okay, it's still kind of cool, but the mysteriousness kind of made the character cooler. When you saw this character in the trailer, you're like, whoa, that looks like a really amazing bad guy. Like, when you watch the movie and you learn everything about the character, like, okay, it's still cool, but I almost kind of wish they'd kept the mysteriousness a bit more. It made the character cooler.
We do learn. I was sort of let down by this character. I thought she was sort of a weak villain, honestly. But that's just my opinion. I think Ghost was the weakest part of the movie. Interestingly enough, did you know the character in the comics is a man?
Well.
So they made her, and they made Ghost into a woman for the movie. So they lose the part, and they're still on the run. Scott has to be careful because if the FBI finds out what he's doing, it could jeopardize his house arrest, and he could go to jail for 20 years, and then he wouldn't be able to see his daughter or family again for a long time. So there's that. So then they go see one of Hank's old colleagues, who is Dr. Bill Foster. He used to work with Hank Pym on a Pym particle growth project called Goliath. He is played by Lawrence Fishburne. For those who do not know or not familiar with the comics, Bill Foster in the comics was a superhero named Goliath, who they reference in this movie, but we never see him go in that direction. So we meet Dr. Bill Foster, and they try to get some help from him, some information about how they could find Ghost, because they need to find Ghost in order to find the part she stole. And he gives them some advice and sort of keeps the authorities off their tail. And then they go to they're able to track down Ghost at her hideout, and they are attacked and subdued by Ghost. And then they're caught. And we learn that Bill Foster is actually working with Ghost. It turns out she was the daughter of sort of another scientist named, I want to say, Elias Starr.
I think you're right.
Starr?
Yeah,
Elias Starr, who in the comics is Dr. Egghead. And he was her in the movie, Ava. We find out Ghost's name is Ava. So she's the daughter of Elias Stark. He was working on, like Hank. It exploded. Her parents died, and the energy that hit Ava caused her form to sort of lose. Like, she's no longer solid, and she's like phasing out of existence. So she needs the quantum realm particles to help stabilize her body, or otherwise she's going to die. And Dr. Bill Foster found her. She used to work for S.H.I.E.L.D. as an assassin. So after S.H.I.E.L.D. was destroyed on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., or it was exposed.
I thought she worked for Hydra as an assassin.
No, she worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. Well, S.H.I.E.L.D. was Hydra for a while, remember?
That's true. Fair enough.
Winter so after it collapsed in Winter Soldier, he found her and he's trying to help save her. So basically the whole conflict is Ghost is trying to finish the experiment so she can restore her body and heal herself. And doing that would possibly kill Janet, which Dr. Bill Foster and, well, Ghost doesn't really care about that. And Dr. Bill Foster doesn't want Janet to die either. So basically they're spending the whole movie, running around trying to keep Hank's lab away, because Sonny Birch, he wants the lab and to sell it on the black market. So he's after Hank and Janet to steal their lab, which they miniaturize and can make to shrink. So they kind of, so they don't get caught with it.
And I was actually kind of glad that Lawrence Fishburne had a bigger role in this, because, like, again, when you watch the trailer, you see him in one scene, you think, does he have a big role or not? So it's kind of nice he had a prominent role. Yeah,
but I
and I
was
like too where they gave them more dimensions in it seemed too. They were more, yeah.
my problem with the Ghost character is that she was better when she was mysterious. I
Mhm.
agree with that. But when we find out her whole back, like they reveal her whole backstory in one scene, and it's kind of
Mhm.
I thought it was kind of pedestrian. What did you think of Ghost's backstory?
Yeah, it was kind of weird because I don't know. I guess it just wasn't as strong of a backstory as I'd hoped. Like with some villains, you know, some villains we have like you get a much better backstory and you see okay why they're the way they are.
It wasn't.
And one thing that's kind of true too, as I read this online after seeing it, is she's
Yeah.
not necessarily a villain. She kind of is, but not as strong of a villain as like some of these. Like,
It was. She had a weak motivation. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I do agree.
Because why aren't they just working together?
Mhm.
Okay, you have a problem. We can all help each other, and there's no good reason for Ghost to be fighting everyone in this film.
I think the only reason they said in the movie that she was because it was slowly deteriorating her everything, like her mind, her body, so she wasn't thinking clearly. I think.
I think it. I don't. I think that was maybe one reason, but it wasn't strongly depicted, in my opinion.
True.
So it was sort of a weak motivation to have her fighting the heroes in the film. So she's trying to steal the lab, and also stop the experiment so they can, or I guess if they find, she wants. It's very confusing because I think they said that Janet being stuck in the quantum realm for all those years makes her collect all this quantum energy, and I think Ghost wants to take her quantum energy and would use it to heal her body. And the heroes are worried that would kill Janet, which Ghost doesn't care about.
In the process, yeah.
And then Dr. Bill Foster toward the end sort of has a change of heart because he doesn't want anyone to get killed, but he does want to help. He does want to help Ghost. So then, I will say the big chase scene in the third act was awesome.
I actually think what was really cool was a number of because I think they like where they could do like they did a lot of the shrinking and like the growing and all that, and that was that actually really added the comedy and the action in a clever way that they didn't get to play with as much in the first film. So
let's talk a little bit about the visuals. I think these are some of the best visuals I've ever seen in a Marvel movie. What do you think?
There were some scenes like especially the quantum realm was pretty goddamn amazing. So I'll give that. That actually those visuals actually reminded me.
But I think when they have the switching and they go from small to big and then super big, all of that looked great to me.
Yeah, and I'm saying it did too, but like the scene that really blew me was like whenever they we saw the quantum realm, so that was really amazing because it reminded me a lot of Dormammu from like that whole area.
It did look like the multiverse of Doctor Strange, right?
Yeah, a lot of the visuals from Doctor Strange reminded me. They were visual reminded me of that movie in this movie. They were really just blew you away.
You remember, like I got to be honest, isn't it strange to you? Do you remember Justice League?
Yeah.
I think the visuals in Justice League looked horrible, like some of the worst I've ever seen for a movie that big.
Yeah.
Yet that's like, and those are your big heavy hitters. That's Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman. And yet, how do the visuals look so awful in a movie like that? Yet they look much better here. What do you think? What do you think it is about that, Jay?
I think what it is somehow Marvel and Disney just maybe puts more time in them. Maybe is what happens. Maybe. But to be fair, like when they do a solo film, it's like for example with Wonder Woman. It was better visuals. So
some of the visuals at the end of Wonder Woman I did not like.
If they just focus on one thing, maybe it's better. If they try to focus on too much at once, I don't know.
You mean having too many characters?
DC has that problem. Marvel doesn't. Marvel can do that like playing a violin. They're just fine.
Right. Plus, Marvel also owns a special effects company, ILM, now.
Which probably helps.
After they bought Lucasfilm. To help with their visual effects.
Yeah, but the visuals were really good, and a lot of the comedy was really good, and it was clever comedy too. It wasn't comedy you expected.
It was. I thought again, since this was more of a comedy this time, even though it was more of a comedy, I thought it worked better than the comedy in the first movie.
It really did, and like heck, like one scene that really stands out to me is where somehow they're able to lock onto the signal for Janet, and like
Right.
Paul Rudd is speaking like Janet. That was hilarious.
While they're working, basically what Jay is referring to, while they're trying to get the machine started to locate Janet, because Scott was in the quantum realm, he has this sort of weird mental connection with Janet. It's sort of like the mental connection with Bones and Spock in Search for Spock. You know what? There are a lot of similarities and parallels between this movie and Search for Spock. So go out and watch Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock sometimes, folks. That's your homework too, Jay. So, and then
I've seen it. It's just been a long time.
So Janet possesses Scott's mind. So Scott is basically acting like Janet and has these cute little moments with Evangeline Lilly as Hope and Michael Douglas as her husband, Hank, and it's very. When I saw the movie at a screening, this scene got a ton of laughs. How about you?
Yeah, it did too, and I laughed too. Like there were actually scenes where you couldn't help but laugh in this movie. Almost didn't want to, but that was just so clever and funny. You couldn't help yourself. Like there were, you know, what was really good in this movie? There were a lot of really good scenes with Paul Rudd's character and his daughter. There were a lot of really good scenes.
They were cute.
Yeah, there were a lot of really good ones, you know.
Yeah, Cassie is trying to encourage her father to become a hero and become a partner with Hope as the Wasp. And there was a scene where basically Scott has to get home before the FBI get there to check it, because he has to check in with his ankle monitors because he's under house arrest, so he's not supposed to be gallivanting outside with Hank and Janet. So he gets there, and Hope covers for him, so she helps him out there. The other funny scenes that I loved were that they use an ant because they can mind control ants. So Hank and Hope put the ankle monitor for Scott on an ant, which it grows super size, and the ant basically it covers his whole daily routine at home. So the authorities think Scott is still at home. Those were some of my favorite scenes in the movie, and that is, I think, where the comedy was best. I think the first movie was hurt because they had to do all those last minute rewrites because Edgar Wright left the film. This movie they didn't have those problems. So I think that's why the comedy worked better. Do you agree?
I agree. And it was also really cool. There were some cool surprises as film went along, you know, like
but the giant ant stuff was my favorite. What did you think of the giant ants?
The giant ant stuff was good. It was mostly used for comedy relief, but it was some good comedy. I don't remember if I laughed hard at all of it, but there was some you're like, all right, that was pretty good. Bravo, bravo.
Okay. Here's the comedy I didn't like was when they gave when Sonny trying to find the lab and the heroes, he interrogates Scott's friends and Luis, and he gives them the truth serum. That scene I didn't think was all that funny.
It was actually fun. It was funnier when they used it on them, and they're like, "Oh my god, it is truth serum." That was kind of funny, I thought.
That was toward the end, but when they did that whole like goofy flashback thing, they brought that back from the first movie. I didn't like that in the first movie either. Yeah, I didn't find that very funny.
It was a little weird, but
not weird. Yeah. That's an example of where the comedy doesn't work as well in this film, or the first one for that matter, to me. So the big chase sequence at the end. So basically, you have Sonny Birch and his crew. They're trying to steal the lab, which is miniature size, like the size of a suitcase. Basically, you have Ghost trying to steal it, and then at the same time, Hank he's gone on this miniature spaceship and he's searching the quantum realm to try and find Janet inside. And meanwhile, so then Wasp and Ant-Man are trying to make sure Ghost and Sonny Birch don't get the building. So they're going all across San Francisco and they're fighting over it. This was a great action sequence. I think it may be one of the best action chase sequences ever in a Marvel film. And one reason is because you had both Wasp and Ant-Man in this scene. You had Ghost with her powers, but Ant-Man also grows in size during this scene. the way it looked great. You could see everything. My problem with a lot of action movies right now, Jay, is they cut too much. They cut too much, and you can't see what's going on. You could see everything that was going on in this action sequence. What do you think?
Yeah, it was a pretty impressive action sequence, and I personally like all the SF stuff because I recognize a lot of locales and locations and all that stuff because I have family up there. So
in the Bay Area,
stuff, yeah, and you know, and honestly, you don't really see a whole lot, especially in Marvel films,
right?
In San Francisco, you don't see either New York or like something
or
like that,
superhero films in general.
Yeah, it's not that common. I don't even remember if the first took place in the Bay Area.
The first one was in the Bay. It was in San Francisco.
But you don't see many Marvel. They're usually all centered in like New York and places like that.
They're usually New York or LA or some remote location.
Yeah, so seeing one close to home was kind of cool.
Well, tell me, how many superhero movies besides the 2 Ant-Man films you remember being set in San Francisco?
I can't think of any off the top of my head.
How many can you think set in New York City?
A lot.
Yeah.
Most of the Marvel films.
It's usually New York City or LA or Gotham City or Metropolis or some variation thereof.
Or Star City or something like that, yeah.
Right.
Star City, DC,
so yeah, it's neat. It's nice to get sort of a different city to kind of, give what it is. It's a nice change of scenery, right? Because as you said, we don't really see many films set in this city, so that's neat. So ultimately, Hank Pym is able to find Janet inside the quantum realm. The quantum realm is very dangerous if you stay there too long, but that was one plot hole I didn't understand. Like, it's dangerous for you to stay there too long, but Janet's been there for like over
30
20
years. Like 30 years.
Like 30 years, since like 1988 or some such, right? So how has she been able to survive that long?
She had some kind of sword on her back, which was something that helped her.
I think those were her wings.
I thought it was a sword.
No, I think those were her wings for her super suit, basically.
I don't know. She found some way, I guess.
So I think I saw a city in a bubble there. So maybe there was a city or somewhere she was safe for a while. But he gets her, and they're able to get out. They grow they're able to get the lab away from Sunny. They grow the lab back in to its regular size. Right by a ferry where they've been fighting. Scott almost dies because he grows big, and he can't maintain. If he's big for too long, he'll eventually pass out. So he passes out underwater, and the Wasp gets him out and saves him. And I thought that was a cool sequence where she gets him out from underwater and saves him.
The sequence I really liked was like where it's Hope and Scott together, and they're with his daughter, and they're watching a drive-in movie. That's
toward the end. I don't want to get there just yet.
Well, it was the happy ending. So.
All right. Well, before that, I also want to get to when he's trying. Sonny Birch has the miniature version of the lab, and he tries to run away on a ferry. So Scott is trying to get to this ferry boat, and he's trying to call the ants with his helmet to fly him out there.
Oh yeah,
and the ants that fly in to help him just get gobbled up by seagulls.
Yeah, that keeps happening.
That was another example of humor I found funny in the film. So they are able to rescue Janet and return her to the regular size realm. Ghost interferes, and then Janet helps her. Somehow being in the quantum realm so long gave her some weird superpowers where she can shoot. I guess she can transfer quantum energy is what it is. Healing quantum energy. And she uses that energy to heal Ghost, but I don't think it was permanent. There was an implication in one of the later scenes that he didn't heal her, or Janet didn't heal Ghost permanently. And then Ghost runs away with Bill Foster. So they kind of make up with Ghost, and then Ghost runs away with Bill Foster to evade the authorities. And then you have Scott running back home because the FBI was trying to catch him in on the act, basically. So he goes back home and is able to just barely make it. And just in time, he gets out of house arrest, so he becomes a free man by the end of the movie. And he's repaired his relationship with Hank and and Hope by helping them rescue Janet. So it's
Can I
pretty
say
much a happy
can I
ending.
say too, Bobby Cannavale was kind of funny. He was kind of a little bit played an awkward character, but he was kind of funny.
He didn't have much to do in this film, though, compared to the first movie.
True, but it was just kind of funny to see him just be like, awkward the whole time. But I thought that wasn't
It
too
wasn't
bad.
that awkward, really.
I wouldn't say superbly awkward, but like, scenes like where like
I
like,
thought
you getting the hug too, like stuff like that. It was kind of.
I thought Judy Greer being so supportive was kind of funny, like saying, "You can't do this; that's legal." And then Bobby Cannavale would be like, "Well, actually, they can't because he's a police officer, so he's doing it from that perspective."
Yeah.
So, what did you think about the ending? Were you satisfied with the ending, the first ending for this movie?
The first ending, here's the thing about it, because again, so I was talking about this before. So
Yeah,
you see Scott, you see Hope, and you see his daughter all in this like van watching a movie.
it looks like they're at a drive-in theater basically.
And you think it's kind of cool to say, hey, like it's a nice moment where Hope says, you know what, I want to say no. His daughter Cassie says, I said I want to be his assist, his like
his partner,
but he wants you to be that. And you're like, oh, that's kind of cool and sweet. Then you see they're in a shrunken one, watching
a movie on a laptop, basically.
Yeah,
making it look like a drive-in.
That was a really cool little kind of like, oh, that was kind of awesome. I didn't see that coming, and it was a warm, funny ending. So yes, that was a clever gag. Like
I think when they do the comedy with the whole, oh, they're really shrunk in size, that I think really works.
And they had a lot of clever gags in this movie like that. They really did. There are a lot of gags like, okay, I didn't see that.
I got to be honest. If we never see Scott's friends in the ever again in the Marvel universe, I wouldn't be upset. I don't care for those characters at all.
I wouldn't mind seeing Michael Payne again, but their two were a little odd. But I wouldn't mind seeing Michael Payne again.
I just don't care. I don't care about those characters. I don't really care for their humor. Hope was okay in this movie. The Wasp was okay, but the character for me has always been Janet. The Wasp has always been Janet to me. That's the Wasp for me. Remember Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes?
I didn't watch it.
Well, I mean, Janet was great on that show, and that show only made me love Janet even more. And Hope just doesn't. I guess my problem with Hope is she takes things too seriously. And what I liked about Janet was always sort of the fun-loving hero. She enjoys being a hero. She has fun with it. She likes doing it. And we haven't really seen much of that from Hope.
I kind of disagree.
And I'm not great. And I don't love it.
I kind of disagree because Hope in this movie is kind of getting the hang of being a hero and seems to have a lot more fun doing it because what her suit can do by like flying. So it seemed to me like I kind of disagree. It's like she was having fun in the extent of
maybe a little bit, but I mean this wasn't really about her being her mother. So it's not like she became a superhero.
But I think she was getting into. She was kind of getting used to like wearing the suit, and because at the end of the first one, we see where she got the suit.
Right.
We really get to see her use it really until this.
Again, I've never. The Hope was never a major character in the comics. It was always Janet, and Janet really isn't in the movie enough for me. And then of course, what happens? Let's do the first post-credits scene. So do you want to set it up for us, Jay?
So what happens in the post-credits scene is
the first one.
Is we see the van again, and they've made a miniature version of the machine they had for the
Quantum Realm.
Quantum Realm, and he's getting ready to shrink into it to go into the Quantum Realm again to get more of the what they say was essence or something like that.
Quantum healing particles is, I believe, what they
he's going in
because they're going in there to collect more particles because they need them to heal Ghost. Is what it sounded like.
So he goes in there to heal Ghost, and again, it's a great visually stimulating scene. It's really cool because we get to see him go back there. But being that it's Marvel and this is connected to the MCU, he gets trapped in there thanks to Thanos.
Right. So basically what happened there is Scott, he's in there, he collects the energy, and he's calling for his friends to bring him back out. And then we see...
Himself, I think.
What was that?
because he couldn't do it himself. He couldn't
Right.
just.
They had to bring him out for him, and
Yeah.
then we go back outside of the quantum realm, and we see that they've all turned to dust.
Yeah.
Hank, Hope, and Janet are
Oh,
dust now, just like the heroes in Avengers Infinity War.
Yeah.
The snap made them go away. The Thanos snap. That's why you mentioned Thanos. The snap at the end of Infinity War, they're all gone. They've been turned to dust. So you end the movie. They just got Janet back. Hope has become a superhero, has become the Wasp, and now they're gone.
Yeah.
And Scott Lang, Ant-Man, is trapped in the quantum realm. So big trouble. Wow, what a kick in the gut. Talk about reopening old wounds, Jay.
It's one of those things where you kind of hope they wouldn't do it, be like, but they probably had to do it. But still, I was like, God damn it, all three of them though. I mean, sheesh.
Did they have to? Yeah, did they have to? Why? Like, I think it would have been more effective if we saw Hope just watching her parents turn to dust in front of her.
Yeah.
That would have been even more devastating.
But all three of them, you're like, what the hell, Marvel? Come on.
Yeah.
It did open old wounds because, again, with Infinity War, people die who I thought at least was safe. I thought, they're going to be okay. They're going to be fine. No,
Spider-Man and Black Panther. You think Spider-Man and Black Panther are fine, right?
Yeah, that's what I thought. There were a lot of people though you thought were safe though in that movie, and the same thing with this. You wouldn't have thought all three of them are going to die.
What was the reaction like when people saw that scene?
I was like, God damn it, Marvel. Because the movie the whole way throughout is such a light movie and it gets so dark real quick at the end.
We had to figure most of the movie was set before that happened in Infinity War. I feel like people had to know that was coming though, right?
But just like, at least for me, I'll at least speak for me here.
The good news,
I knew that it was probably going to be coming, but I didn't know it was going to be that brutal. It was kind of like Infinity War all over again. I knew that Infinity War was going to be brutal, but I didn't know it was going to be that.
One note I want to make about the scene before Scott went into the quantum realm, Janet did mention to watch out for the time warps. So I think that might be important for Avengers 4, Jay. That apparently in the quantum realm he might be able to travel through time. Maybe that's how we'll meet. Because we know Ant-Man is going to be in Avengers 4, so maybe that's how they get in contact with him.
Maybe.
Did you remember that Janet? She mentioned like time holes in the quantum realm. Do you remember that?
I didn't remember.
She did mention that. So then there's another ending there. So that's sort of after the big opening closing credits sequence, and then there's the rest of the credits, and then there's another scene at the very end.
And that was just the one where it was the giant ant playing Rock Band, right? Playing the drums.
Right. The ant is still covering. But what was interesting about that scene is after the Thanos snap. So it's basically after like an apocalyptic event, and there's like an emergency broadcast system on the TV. So I guess I enjoyed the humor of the fact that you see this scene, this devastating scene where all the characters you like have been annihilated and killed basically and turned into dust. And then we get another scene. We get another scene of just humor, of just the giant ant playing.
You know what? Speaking of humor, you know what just came to me that was really funny?
What?
I really actually liked, and I think it was one of the better ones in a while, the Stan Lee cameo in this was hilarious.
Well, he did have a cameo.
Because he was about to go to his car, it gets shrunk. He goes, well, I guess the 60s are coming back to haunt me.
Something.
Yeah, he says like I had a lot of fun in the 60s, but I guess now they're coming back to haunt me.
Something like that.
That was really funny, I thought.
I'm glad Stan Lee is still around and gets to have appearances in all these movies.
That was one of his funnier cameos in a while.
I mean, look, without Stan Lee, we don't have this whole Marvel Cinematic Universe. He helped create all these. He helped create like the Marvel Universe we know and love. So it's great to see him.
So
I think Stan Lee, I think he's like 95 now too.
So what would you give this one out of 10?
Out of 10, I think I gave it like an 8.
I'd probably be around there, 7.5.
I feel like my initial review, I gave it an 8.5. So I feel like an 8.5. It's not good enough to be It's not good enough to be a 9, but it's a good movie. It's good.
Yeah.
It's good, entertaining fare. It was
Yes.
better. I liked it more than Solo. How about that?
Okay.
What about
Yeah,
you?
because I think I gave Ant-Man, I think gave like that one like a 6. I'd give this one probably a 7.5 or an 8, because this was lighter fare, but it was fun lighter fare, so we needed lighter fare.
Yeah.
It was enjoyable.
Yeah, you need this was a good smaller scale movie. Smaller scale, smaller stakes, but the stakes are still important.
Mm-hmm.
Like the mission is very important. It's a very important mission to save Janet. But it's personal, and that really worked for this film. The villains didn't really work all that much in this film to me.
Yeah, they were a little weak, but
they were the weakest part of the movie.
Yeah,
but Paul Rudd is great in this film, and even though I don't really love the Scott Lang character, I think he does a good job as this character. I think Evangeline Lilly did a good job for the most part. I wish Michelle Pfeiffer could have done a little bit more as Janet, though. So that was Ant-Man and the Wasp. So that will be I think that's our last major Marvel movie until Avengers 4. I mean, we are getting the next X-Men movie.
That's
not Marvel.
First of all, I thought I heard Dark Phoenix got pushed back again.
To February. It's not coming out until February for
Dark Phoenix. We're getting in March, but after that is Ms. Marvel, right?
Oh, right. I totally blanked on Miss Marvel.
Yeah, that comes out.
No, when does Miss Marvel come out?
I thought it was March.
No, not Miss Marvel, Captain Marvel.
That's what I meant. That's what I meant.
We can't say Miss anymore. That's a different
Captain
character.
Marvel. That's what I meant.
March 8th is Captain Marvel. You're right. So Captain Marvel will be in March of next year, and then Avengers. So that'll set up
and Avengers 4. May, right?
What was that?
Avengers is going to be May next year.
And Avengers will be in May of next year. So thank you for that. All right. So Captain Marvel, the character of Carol was originally Miss Marvel, and then she became Captain Marvel later. And now Miss Marvel is Kamala Khan. So, so that's what we have to look forward to for the Marvel universe. So, are you happy with the way the ending for this movie kind of set up Avengers 4, though, Jay?
Yeah, because the first ending is devastating, but the second one kind of was like, yeah, well, here's a little bit of ointment for the wound, so you can laugh.
The ant was not ointment. The ant was hilarious, though. That was my favorite part of the movie. Anything dealing with the giant ants, I loved in this film, because stuff like that. It reminds me of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Remember that movie?
I do, actually, yes.
So there was sort of a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids sort of vibe in some of the Ant-Man movies that I like, and that's what I like about these.
Fair enough. So let's do a little bit of TV, recent TV episodes.
All right, so now we're done with our spoiler cast, so now we're moving on to TV recaps.
You can move your hands from your ears now.
Yes.
So first one to get into, and I just caught up recently, is DuckTales, actually, is what I want to get into personally.
The Gizmo Duck episode was really good.
I didn't watch that one yet. The last one I watched was where we saw. I can't believe
that's one of the best episodes.
I agree.
The show's really well written, though. I gotta say
it is, and you know what? It's getting better because the last episodes I watched, they showed one where we saw that girl again, the friend of Webby, and what's happening on that episode. It was called Jaws. Was where she has her drop a ruby into the money bin to try to find the #1 dime. And we get to see more of Magica's shadow in that one. It was a really kind of cool episode. Everything played out. Then there was an episode after that, which was the Day of the Only Child, where
wait, was the one with the ruby? Was Magica dispelling that at all?
Yes, yeah, her shadow.
I like that character.
Yeah, Magica Dispel herself hasn't come back, but the shadows, and this was the first time that we got to hear the shadow talk more, which is kind of interesting. And then, so that was kind of an interesting episode, and we get to learn more about, and I can't remember the freaking girl's name off the top of my head, but she's like the niece or something of Magica. And Magica
so Webby's friend is really just trying to get close to them for her aunt, is what you're saying. Yeah.
So that's been an interesting little twist there with that dynamic. And Webby's all excited because it's her first sleepover. She's never had a sleepover before. And then after that episode, we had the next one where it was the Day of the Only Child, where Huey, Dewey, and Louie create a holiday where they all just have a day where they're an only child. and it's kind of a three-parter where it shows how it like affects the three of them.
Yeah.
And we get to see Doofus in this, but Doofus is very different in this.
How is he different in the show now?
Doofus in this one is a insanely rich kid because I guess when his like grandma died, it gave him every penny she had. So he only hangs out with people who are only childs like him and rich. So I think it was Louis tries to hang out with him, but finds out he's, you know, really nuts. So that was interesting. And then when
we need to go back and watch the Gizmo Duck episode though, because that was awesome.
It was, I agree. And so we get to see them all deal with this day. And then there was an episode.
I think we also find out that that Duckworth is dead.
And he's and that episode was interesting because Huey, Dewey, and Louie are trying to throw Scrooge a birthday party. He didn't want a birthday party. He's like, I don't want one. I forget what that. And the real reason is because Duckworth used to always throw him such amazing parties, whether he wanted them or not. And it actually brings Duckworth's ghost back. So after that episode, Duckworth the ghost is back as his butler. So it's kind of cool. And then there was another episode where Goldie comes back, and that was really kind of cool to see her back. And you know, her and Scrooge was a joke where like Scrooge is like, yeah, me and her in the Gold Rush, and one of the kids is like, Gold Rush? How the hell old are you? How old are you? Because they're both like, they both say like they like had something happen. They're both like older, like they still acting, but they're like probably over 100 years old each.
Well, in this universe, it probably wasn't the original Gold Rush.
Yeah, but it was really cool to see Goldie come back. And then the last episode I watched,
Goldie was his girlfriend in the original show, right?
Yes. So it's cool to see her come back. And then they had the episode after that. What was the last episode I watched?
We also find out that basically in this universe, Darkwing Duck was an old TV show in this, like, basically like the Adam West Batman series.
Yeah, so that was really kind of cool. And Launchpad knew the actor who was. Oh, yes, that's right. That's right. So in the last episode, and here's another great thing about this show, which is why this show is clever, is we went back in time and it jumped between the back and the front where Agent 22 was Mrs. Beakley. So Mrs. Beakley used to be a
that's a neat plot twist.
Yeah, a secret agent. And what was really funny was when I think it was Steelbeak. It wasn't actually Steelbeak, but it was something. The bad. What was it? It'll show me here. Let's see. It wasn't Steelbeak, but it was
a villain from Darkwing Duck. Is that the basic?
No, it was Black Heron, but it was Shush, and we found out she was a Shush agent, and that's how her and Scrooge met. Was because so we got to see how Scrooge and Mrs. Beakley first met, and Black Heron was the name of the bad guy, and was trying to get a hold of this potion from the agents, and the potion from the agents was actually gummy bear juice. That's what it was. So
did they actually call it gummy bear juice?
That's not what they called it, but that's what it was. You saw a picture where it was like the two of that, like the agents, but it was like gummy bears. And when they drank the juice, they were able to bounce up and down like the gummy bears.
Okay, so it worked like the gummy bear juice in that animated show.
Which was a really cool twist, I thought. And the episode was just really cool because you got to learn like something about Mrs. Beakley's past, which I don't think we've ever learned about before like that. Mm-hmm. And it was just a really fun episode. I really enjoyed it, and I think it just shows that this show is going to keep surprising me because I didn't expect it to be amazing.
I'm not caught up on DuckTales yet, but what I've watched in the new show is very good.
Yeah, the next episode is going to actually deal with Gizmo Duck, where I think Mark Beeks is going to try to get a hold of the technology for himself because he wants it.
One other thing, because we kind of put it off for our last couple of shows, but I did finish Luke Cage season 2. I also got to interview the showrunner and lead writer Cheo Hidari Coker and Simone Missick, who plays Misty Knight in the first 2 seasons and also in The Defenders. Have you?
I think I saw one of the episodes. I think Lucy Liu actually directed one of the episodes.
Yeah, she directed an episode this season.
That was
very cool. Yeah. Did you watch this season at all, Jay?
I did, and you know what? Especially the final episode was full of a lot of surprises I didn't see coming. A lot of them.
The ending for this season, let's not give it away, but the ending for
I'm not going to give it away. I'm not going to give it away, but I'll say this.
Yeah.
There were some things this season you expected to happen that took a long time to happen.
Yes.
There were some things this season that didn't happen at all that was quite surprising to me. And there were some
one
things.
thing, just for example, one thing we expected to happen was Misty getting her bionic arm, and that did happen. So
Yeah.
there was that.
And what was interesting too was just how they wrapped everything up. Again, I'm not going to spoil anything, but I was like, I didn't see that
It was
coming
a
at
bit
all.
surprising, yeah.
It was quite surprising. You're like, wow, that's going to really change.
It was a bold ending. It was a bold choice for the ending.
Yeah.
It was I thought it was a good season. I think it wasn't like the first season. I thought started off really good, and then midway through kind of took a dive. This season I thought was a little more level. However, I did think it was a bit too long. I think they could have done all of that in 10 episodes instead of 13.
I beg to differ because I'll admit some of the episodes were a little too long. I'll admit that.
All right. So I mean, that's what I'm talking. That's what I'm talking about, though.
But 13 episodes was still good, I think, because you got to learn a lot about They actually did a pretty good job explaining some of the histories of some of the characters on here.
Well, we do get to meet Luke's father this time, who was played by the late Reggie Cathy.
Yeah, which I that was one thing that shocked me too. And they said that, died. I'm like, God damn it, because he was so good. I wanted to see him more.
He was great this season, and it is a tragedy we won't get to see him because his whole subplot with Luke was my favorite part of the season, I think.
Yeah, it was a really good part of the season, that's for sure. But you know who was also really good this season? Shades was actually pretty good.
I didn't like Shades. I'll tell you who I did like though. Bushmaster was awesome.
You know what? Bushmaster was a different bad guy. He was, because the bad guys in the first season were very easy to hate. But as the season progressed,
we learned more about Bushmaster's backstory.
Your views of Bushmaster kind of changed.
Yeah.
He was one of those Marvel villains. You're like, damn, I kind of get where he's coming from.
Kind of like Killmonger, almost.
Yeah, kind of.
But that character was really good, and I like that Bushmaster. He's a physical threat to Luke Cage as well because he uses the nightshade drug, and that gives him.
I also liked too. It was kind of nice how they brought in some people from previous shows, like how they brought in
Colleen Wing was there this season.
And bringing Danny back. That was kind of cool.
Oh, the 10th episode was basically like a Heroes for Hire. That was my favorite episode this season. What did you think of that episode?
It was so the Heroes for Hire, was that where him and
that's basically when like Iron Fist and Luke Cage in the comics like basically team up and start their own like hero business, basically.
Yeah, it was a good episode. There were some. I will say this: when it comes to some season 2s lately, this one was a bit stronger than some of the previous season 2s we've gotten lately.
It was. I think it was easily stronger than the season 2 for Jessica Jones, which was a big misfire. Big misfire for season 2 of Jessica Jones.
It just wasn't as strong as season 1.
It was not a very good season, but this was I think a good season of Marvel TV.
And not just that, but like where it ended, I was like, man, that's going to be. I'm very curious to see what's going to happen now because it's very, very different. So that was very interesting.
Since you're watching Cloak and Dagger now, they actually referenced a character from Cloak and Dagger this season. Do you know Detective O'Reilly on Cloak and Dagger?
I want to say yes.
That character was actually mentioned during this season of Luke Cage, so a bit of an Easter egg for you there. Just something to look forward to if you ever
brought that segueing into Cloak and Dagger so far. It started off a little bumpy, but it's getting better. I like it. So for the last episode I just watched let's just put the basic gist of this. So basically what this show has been doing is what most Marvel shows do, where lately is, okay, these two people have powers. They don't really understand their powers. They're getting the hang of their powers. They're slowly getting the hang of their powers. Okay, they have a bit of better grip on their powers. And this show is big because we've heard of the Roxxon Corporation before, but pretty much the Roxxon Corporation is the main bad guy in this show so far. Which so far I think they've done a pretty good job with.
Like it's a big when they were kids, basically when Tyrone and Tandy were kids, there was this explosion at a Roxxon like offshore oil rig, and they were both they were underwater and almost drowned, and Tyrone saves her life, and when they meet each other again a few years later, it's like whenever they come into contact with each other, their powers sort of like explode and manifest. So that's that's an interesting setup to me.
Yeah, and
Also,
this show so
okay.
far,
Yeah.
like I said, it's one of those shows that, like, the last episode that my review goes live tomorrow, so you can learn more about it then. Was really an interesting episode, just in the sense that they kind of come together, they go on a really, really interesting journey together, but in the end, a lot of growth between the two of them happens. And I think so far, of all the shows I've watched, episodes I've watched of it, this most recent episode that airs on Thursday is my favorite episode of the season so far. It was
another thing about the show that, in terms of unique settings, sort of like Ant-Man and the Wasp, which is set in San Francisco, this whole show is set in New Orleans, Louisiana. So that kind of gives it a unique feel that I think other Marvel shows don't have, you know? Because the Netflix shows, those are all set in New York City, some area of New York City. The movies are, you know, set in New York City or LA or whatever. But Cloak and Dagger is set in New Orleans, so that kind of gives it a unique vibe, don't you think?
Yeah, I think Jeff Loeb said when I interviewed him at WonderCon, that's kind of what they were going for. They wanted to make it a bit more unique, which was a good move, I think, on their part.
Yeah, I think the actors who play Cloak and Dagger, Tandy and Tyrone, are also very good.
Yeah, they really are. And
Olivia Holt, and who is I think who is it that plays Tyrone? Is it Aubrey Joseph?
Yeah, Aubrey Joseph and Olivia Holt.
Right. Olivia Holt, she was on a couple Disney sitcoms. So this show is really sort of like a big, you know, a big move up for her.
And continuing with Marvel, I do want to talk a bit about Marvel Spider-Man so far, season 2.
Season 2 has been great.
It has. And you know what? The last episode where he gets to work with Ms. Marvel, and it is Ms. Marvel in this one, Kamala.
Yeah.
And we see Ames show up, which was really cool. It was kind of cool to see him do a team up with the Avengers. We actually do see Captain Marvel in there, which was really cool. So she is in there.
They've done a great job of bringing in like other Marvel heroes to this show as well. Yeah, sort of like Ultimate Spider-Man.
Jonah Jameson has been an absolute, you know, butthole so far, but that's kind of how the character is.
That's the way he's supposed to be.
Yeah, I agree. It's how he's supposed to be. So
he's not supposed to like. He doesn't like Spider-Man. He doesn't get along with Spider-Man. It's J. Jonah Jameson. Okay.
Yeah, but we've gotten to see, like, you know, some really, like, Spider-Man. Honestly, this season has kind of had it rough so far, but he keeps going on. And I will say this too: when it comes to Marvel Spider-Man, because I also am Movie Savior 23 on Facebook. I want to say thank you to everybody who's been giving love to the clips. I've been getting lately. I'm getting like 1,000 views, 2,000 views. I love that. The comments are great. I'll try to comment back when I can. So thank you all very much for that. I've been getting very good love on my YouTube page for that, on Movie Seeker 23. And I also want to spend just a little moment. I just caught up on this show this weekend too. Is actually season 2 of Tangled the series, which is called Rapunzel's Tangled Adventure. It's only had 3 episodes so far. And what we learn in the very first episode is a lot about the Moonstone and how the rocks came to be. And like, there's this like place called, I guess, the Dark Kingdom, that because at the end of the first season of Tangled the series, we see the rocks break a hole through the wall of Corona. And so I guess Rapunzel decides, you know, Eugene and a few of her friends are going to go with her, Cassandra, to follow these rocks and see where it takes them. And we meet a new character who I think her name was, oh God, what's her name? What's her name? Her name is like, let me see if I can find her name. She's like, she actually has a sword that is made out of like the black stone. It's kind of interesting. It can cut through the black stone.
Has Varian come back yet? He's one of the more interesting characters in the show.
We haven't seen Varian yet, no. But again, only 3 episodes have aired so far.
But it looked like last season. It looked like Varian was on the path to becoming a villain, basically.
Yeah, he definitely is. That's absolutely for sure. But let me see if I can find her name.
And then Cassandra. You want to know what my theory of Cassandra is?
I've heard your theory. I don't know if it's true, but I've heard your theory.
All right, well, what do you think of my theory about Cassandra?
I don't know. It's really hard to tell at this point. I mean, like right now, at least where the first few episodes I watched, It doesn't really go into.
Captain of the Guard is not her real father.
I know
was
that.
An orphan.
I know
She
that.
was an
But
orphan.
what they're
We don't
showing,
know where Cassandra came from.
And I know that.
Cassandra led Rapunzel to the rock that caused her hair to go back at the beginning of the show. Don't you think that's a little convenient, Jay? How is that?
Look, I'm not saying you're wrong, but let me just go into where the show has gone so far. Because like the first 3 episodes of Rapunzel's Tangled Adventure is where they meet a new person.
Who's the new person?
I can't find her freaking name.
I've been at Anime Expo for the last week, so I haven't seen these episodes yet.
Let me see if I can find it. Let me see here.
So do they know what, like, Varian's whole town?
Here we go. It's
Varian's whole town and his family are like frozen in like rocks and stuff.
It's Adria. Adria is her name, voiced by Kelly. So and we see in the first episode, because we see at the beginning.
It's Kelly who is Adria.
That's what I said. So what happens is, on the first episode, we see a cutback, like scene from like 20, 30 years, 25 years ago or something like that.
Right.
Where we see this like castle slowly getting torn apart by the rocks. You know, the black rocks.
Are they the same rocks that destroyed Varian's town?
Yes.
Okay.
And we see that the moonstone is actually at this castle. So the moonstone itself is there. Not like, which is like, I think the sister or brother to the sunstone, which was, what happened, which went on the flower that Rapunzel's mother ate, that made Rapunzel's hair the way it was in the first movie. And so we see that whole scene, and then we see I think like the place, like the king gets hurt or wounded, and then because he tries to grab it or something, I think he wanted to destroy it, but you can't really destroy the moonstone that easily. And we see the piece of the rock that Adria takes to make her sword, and then we kind of go to the present day where and there's a few cool, like, this is a 40-minute episode where and maybe you and I will get review copies of it, where they have like 3 songs, their new songs about their new journey, their new quest and Eugene is still thinking about, proposing to Rapunzel, but he's not sure about actually doing it because it's her first time away from Corona. So there's that whole thing going on. And they end up in a town that Eugene had gone to many, many years ago. And it turns out he had, left someone at the altar, and there's that whole thing going on with Regina and Rapunzel. And
does he meet the woman he left at the altar?
Yeah, and she tries to make him marry him again because her dad.
Was he actually in love with her, or why was he going to marry her?
Because he was still a criminal at the time, and I think they used to be like criminal people working together or something like that.
Oh, okay.
But and the guy who voiced her dad, I want to say was who was it? Let's see. Oh yeah, Lance Henriksen was one who voiced the Baron.
Oh wow.
And yeah, he has a little venomous Kai spider that pretty much bites Lance. And if Eugene doesn't marry his daughter by nightfall, Lance is going to die. So said, Rapunzel sees, oh my God, Eugene's marrying someone else. What the heck? But of course, she doesn't know at the time that, hey, this is why he's doing that, to save his pretty much best friend. And they go to this new town called Varderos, which is normally a really great, amazing town, but it's fallen into disarray because of the Baron and crime and all that stuff. And after this whole thing ends, the second they save Lance in time. The Baron gets bitten by the same spiders. The Baron and Stallion, which was the daughter's name, runs away. And after that, we see they help. They bring a guy. So
they aren't getting back to Varian.
No. And then in the second episode,
how can you not follow up on the whole Varian thing after what happened to him? He's going to come after Corona and Rapunzel now, Jay.
Didn't he do that in the Queen for a Day one?
Not yet.
I thought. No. Oh, you're right. He was trying to save them.
He was trying to go to Corona and Rapunzel.
And then in the second episode, they bring back a guy called Quaid, who was a legendary sheriff of the town. And after that episode comes to an end, they tried to do the third one. They tried to bring the Goodwill Festival to Varderos, but it was totally different. And basically, in a nutshell, the first 3 episodes, they spend in Varderos. After they're done, they leave Varderos. Varderos is better than when they first got there, and their quest continues. Basically,
I have a question.
Sure.
Why did they change the title?
Well, because pretty much what's happening now is she is going towards this, where these rocks are taking her, which is taking her to that dark kingdom where the Moonstone is, which hopefully, because again, Adria.
So they're going on like a quest right now.
Yeah, and there's a scene where Adria actually tries to cut her hair with her sword, but doesn't cut. Now the sword doesn't break, but it doesn't.
Her hair is like unbreakable, basically.
Yeah. So they start like the, and it looks like what they're going to do with this episode, this show, as far as I can tell so far, is they're going to be like, you know, kind of going towards that place and probably do like maybe stay in a place for 2 or 3 episodes and then move on to the next. That's what it seems like.
Okay. All right.
So it's an interesting start for it. I enjoyed it so far. And I'm definitely curious to see where it goes next, because it sounds like it's definitely going to be an interesting season.
All right.
For sure. So
well, I think that about wraps things up for us today. So
I think so. The only other thing I really have to say is, again, my review of the next Cloak and Dagger episode goes live tomorrow. Also, I do want to spend just a second, because I do have to do this. I just finished the whole season yesterday.
Of what?
Of the Epic Tales of Captain Underpants.
Oh my God.
Hey. Here's what I'll say about
that movie was terrible.
I beg to differ. I thought it was silly but fun, so I didn't hate it.
Oh my God.
And the show, the show is silly, but it has like
blindsided me here,
on
Jay.
there for an episode. Rob Riggle's on there for an episode. Stephen Root's on there a lot, and it was a silly show. And you know what? This was actually better than the movie because, and Sean Astin is the narrator, by the way, of the whole entire.
You mean Sean Astin?
That's what I meant.
From Lord of the Rings.
Yes. And he's really good as the narrator. And so my review of that season goes live tomorrow as well. And you know what? It was silly, but I enjoyed it. It's only 10 episodes, about 20 minutes each. And it was fun. I could see kids enjoying it. I mean, it won't be for everybody, but Epic Tales Captain Underpants, I thought was kind of silly, but fun, enjoyable.
Speaking of a better show on Netflix, if you like the first season of Castlevania, season 2 is going to debut in October, on October 26th. So just in time for Halloween. That was announced at Anime Expo.
Yeah, I actually also I talked to one of the guys at E3 who's behind that. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That's gonna be really, really good. 8 episodes. I think it got to season 3, didn't it?
Also, another good show on Netflix that is way better than Captain Underpants is Agretsuko. Season 2 is going to debut at 2019. That was also announced at Anime Expo.
I couldn't get it. I watched the trailer for that. I couldn't. It looked too weird.
It is that show is 1,000,000 times better than Captain Underpants. It's also better than DuckTales. But DuckTales, unlike Captain Underpants, is a good show.
But one thing that is going to be coming again, I'll say it again, is Disenchantment. Which I'm definitely looking forward to that one. I want to see that one back.
Oh, okay. That's the new Matt Groening show.
Yeah. And
that one's coming right around the corner in August.
Yep.
So there you go.
And they actually have something at San Diego for that, so I'm looking forward to that.
Oh yeah. So speaking of San Diego Comic-Con, that's next week. Jay and I will both be there. I think we'll have some discussion on here about that. Maybe we'll preview Comic-Con a little bit, like a pregame for Comic-Con, and then we'll have like a post-show wrap up of Comic-Con. And also, I can say I've seen Skyscraper. I can't talk about it yet. Also, I will be seeing The Equalizer 2 with Denzel Washington.
I don't know if that's gonna be good enough.
We'll probably be talking about those on here. So check out my coverage of Luke Cage season 2, my review of Ant-Man and the Wasp, and some of my Anime Expo coverage and E3 coverage right now at 411mania.com. And Jay, where can people check out your news and reviews?
You can see a lot of my coverage for a lot of E3 stuff. I'm just getting toward the end of my E3 coverage now. I have maybe a few more reviews to do. Epic Tales Captain Underpants season 1 goes live tomorrow. My review of the next Cloak and Dagger episode goes live tomorrow. They're both in the arts and entertainment section of the Good Men Project, so you'll see both of those and my coverage for all the episodes. I get episodes for that every week. Hopefully on Friday I'll have my coverage for the next episode of Marvel Spider-Man. We'll see, but I'm shooting for around there. And also, I got a review code of Mario Tennis Aces, so hopefully I'm going to have a review of that in the next week or so, because I definitely am looking forward to that. So thank you, Nintendo, very much for that. And and we're both getting ready for Comic-Con. It's going to be here before we know it. It's going to be nuts, but it's going to be fun at the same time. So hooray for that.
Hopefully it won't be too hot in San Diego. Like it was in LA last week.
Yeah, let's pray. But and I think I'm going to try to keep keep up again with Rapunzel and DuckTales because I've been a little behind on both of those, and DuckTales has been really good so far, so I'm looking forward to more of that. One more question: did you get to watch any of Big Hero 6 episodes yet? Have you watched any of those?
Not yet. I've been
neither.
mainly watching Spider-Man and got caught up in Anime Expo and finishing that up and prepping for Comic-Con. So that is on that is on the docket. There's only so much time in the day. Okay. Also, check us out, Hollywood Purgatory. We're on Facebook. We are on Twitter. We are on YouTube. So check out our social media channels, and we will come back and see you next time. I'm Jeffrey. He is Jay Snook. Thank you, everybody.
Adios.